Hello and welcome to the show. So it is becoming rather common for supercar manufacturers to make special editions of their high-end supercars, getting more power, more torque, making them lighter, and so on. Ferrari have been doing it for a while, and certainly when it comes to the 360 Challenge that we have here, this is a fantastic vehicle. I've talked quite a few times about how good this car is to drive. If you were to ask me to pick a Ferrari to go down a tight, twisty, windy road, I would pick one of these. That's how well they handle over anything else. They are fantastic cars to drive. The 355 Challenge is also a very, very good car. But the 360 is absolutely amazing when it comes to the driving front. Maybe I wouldn't perhaps pick one of these to own over an F40, but certainly on a twisty road, one of these is amazing. I also love how Lamborghini decided to stage an intervention while I was filming this. I think an Aventador and a Veneno drive past. They're getting a little bit jealous. I'm talking about Ferraris. And then the God of Thunder decided he couldn't be out-noised by some Italian cars, and he joined in as well. Yes, it was all very noisy while I was trying to film this. Yeah, but not all of the special edition Ferraris are as fantastic. The 430 Scuderia was a car that I never really liked. Yes, it was faster than the standard 430. The 430 was one of those cars that I was never... I mean, it was an alright car. It was a car that I was never that interested in. The same with the Scuderia. It was more powerful, it had more torque, it was lighter than the normal 430. And yes, if you paid attention, you could get it around a track pretty damn quickly. But it never really drove very nicely, in all honesty. I just didn't like the way this car drove. Yes, around a track, I'm sure it would go quicker than the 360 Challenge, but I wouldn't want to drive this one around a track particularly. I'd much rather be driving the 360 because it's just not quite as composed, a little twitchy, a little oversteery. Yeah, it's not quite as nice. It's not quite as sorted out, if you like, as the 360 Challenge or the 355 Challenge, for that matter. So when it comes to making a special edition of the 458, let's face it, the 458 is also the benchmark for all modern supercars. That's what they're all compared against. Ferrari got a little work to make what is already a very good car even better. And we start with, well, the looks of the 458 Speciale. I quite like it, I have to say. I like the styling tweaks they've done. A new front bumper. Car looks a little bit more aggressive now. They've also, I'm not sure if it's still got the silly flappy bits. I know they're there for aero. I still think they look stupid, regardless of their purpose. I think they are still there, but they're a lot better hidden in the front of the car. It looks a lot better from the front, in my opinion. And again, we come around the back, and thankfully, we've got an even number of exhausts. That makes me happy that there is now an even number. I'd never liked the 3 exhausts on the back of the 458. Much prefer the look of the Speciale. It's a little bit more racy as well. We've got the diffuser going on. I just think, in general, it's just a little bit better looking. They're not huge styling tweaks to the car. There's just little subtle changes. No, it's not as crazy as a Lamborghini. But it's still, I think it's just an overall a better looking car. I mean, the 458, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad looking car to start with. It's just a little bit better with this one. When we look at the performance figures, again, we carry on with this, just everything a little bit better. We've got a little bit more horsepower, although admittedly it's only sort of 35 more horsepower. It's not a huge gain. The torque is exactly the same, and it weighs 200 pounds less. Little differences. It's not a huge, to be fair, it's not as much as I expected from this car. I was expecting much bigger horsepower differences, torque differences and so on. But there is not a huge amount of difference between this car and the standard. Again, 0 to 60 time of the standard car is around 3 seconds. This one's 2.8. I mean, 2.8 is bloody quick. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a huge difference from the standard car. 0 to 100 is 6 seconds in this one, 6.8 in the standard one, and top speed we're looking at 215 for this one, and I think it's 213 for the normal 458. They're not huge differences, especially when you're considering it's sort of 60,000 credits more for the Speciale. They're not a huge amount of differences between the two cars. However, all these little tweaks add up to one big difference, and that is this car is absolutely exquisite to drive. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but given that same choice of pick a Ferrari to drive down a windy road, I'm going to have the 458 Speciale. That's how good this car is. It really is very, very good through the corners. You may notice in this video, it does look a little bit darty, and yes, it changes directions incredibly quickly. but it has enough rear end grip to get away with it. You can throw this through corners, change direction very, very quickly, because it has the grip to get away with it. It has fantastic brakes as well, so when you do end up being a moron and get things a little bit wrong, outbrake yourself, it's fine. You can just about get away with it because everything on this car is very, very good. I mean, it's as responsive as most of the track cars that I've driven. That's how nice the Ferrari is, and we have plenty of rear grip. The gearbox is lovely as well. It has nice short gear ratios, unlike a lot of modern supercars and hypercars that are geared to get to a high top speed. This is geared to go racing at tracks. It's got lovely short ratios for the gearbox. It is a fantastic car to drive, huge amounts of fun. However, when we look at the statistics, it puts it in a rather close proximity to another Ferrari, the Enzo. Again, this car's 0 to 60 time is supposedly 3 seconds, 0 to 100 around 6, and top speed 217 miles an hour. Sounds very similar to the 458 Speciale. However, the Enzo has 60 more horsepower. It's putting out 650. It has almost 100 more torques and weighs just 11 pounds more. Now, I'm not quite sure what they've done to the 458 Speciale. I think there's some magic. I think there has been some magic involved in that one to get all of the speed. But yeah, surely it couldn't go quicker than the Enzo, considering Enzo got a lot more power, a lot more torque, weighs practically the same. So it was time to go and have a race with them. My expectations were that perhaps the 458 would be nicer through the corners. I was expecting the Enzo to munch it when it came to a straight. I mean, the benchmark figures on here are only a sort of an estimation. So yeah, we decided to go racing with these two cars, and I was completely and utterly wrong. This is the 458 cruising up behind an Enzo and going flying past as we come up towards the first turn of this particular track. Now, to test these cars, I found one of the fastest tracks there are in Horizon 2. This is a really very, very quick track for racing cars around, mostly straights. I mean, you're regularly getting up to speeds well past 170 around here. And the Enzo can't keep up. It cannot keep up with a 458 in a straight line. As we come through these next corners here, flat out in both cars, you will see the Enzo disappearing in the wing mirror. It just does not have the speed of the 458. That's not what I expected. I get things that run a little bit wide. The Enzo runs even wider on that course. I wait up, I let the Enzo go back past again, and we carry on messing around racing. I get things wrong this time. I get things wrong around here. I'm a little bit too wide, end up taking out a couple of signs. Not what you normally do with a Ford. Let's be honest, you don't normally come out of that quite so nicely. You will see the amount of time I am gaining as we go over the crest of this hill. I'm catching all the way up to the back of the Enzo down here. Enzo runs a little bit wide through this next quarter, and then I'm suddenly there. That is how good and how quick the 458 Speciale is. It really does cause problems for an Enzo. Let's not forget, the Enzo is almost 700,000 credits, and it's getting beaten by this car. Again, Enzo has a better run onto this start-finish straight. Yes, I've got a little bit of slipstream, but let's be honest, it's not a huge amount, and I pull out of the slipstream fairly quickly. It's still we're catching, still we're almost alongside. I'm now trying to go the long way around, which is quite difficult to do. The Enzo does do fairly well in keeping up through the corners. He's not completely destroyed through the corners. In the end, I figure I don't want to go too wide through here. I'll just let the Enzo go and be a little bit careful across the grass. Now we come up to the section where the 458 really excels, if you like, through here. I'm a little bit wide this time round. You'll still see how much I'm catching the Enzo. I've got everything wrong, and Enzo is still not dropping me. The reason why I think it is the gearbox. The gearbox in the 458 is fantastic. As you'll see here, we're going through all the gears. We're up into 7th gear by the end of the long straight. The Enzo goes from, I think it's 4th gear around this corner, maybe 3rd gear around this corner. It goes up into 4th and then sits in 5th. For the entirety of this straight, the Enzo, most of this straight, the Enzo is in 5th, while my car goes from 4th to 7th. Much better gear ratios in the 458, which means that the Enzo, yes, may eventually reach a higher top speed. Technically, it will reach a higher top speed, and I think it will get to 217 before the 458 will get to 215, possibly. But because it's got much better gear ratios, better acceleration from the 458, when it comes to a straight line, and we're talking sort of a decent straight here, the Enzo doesn't stand a chance. The Enzo does not stand a chance, and now I'm ahead. The Enzo could kind of defend a little bit, but as soon as I get ahead, there you go, Enzo's vanished again in the rear view mirror. it just could not keep up with the Speciale. I could drive away from it through the corners, which is not the result that I was expecting. So what about another hypercar? The Noble M600. Again, another one. 650 horsepower in the Noble, 600 torque, and it weighs 300 pounds lighter than the 458 Speciale. Surely the Noble would go quicker. The Noble is a little bit cheaper, 220,000 credits, still fairly expensive. So this would be another interesting close race. Expectation was the Noble would be the quicker car in a straight line, and sure enough, it is. It will outdrag the Ferrari. It will accelerate the Ferrari off the line. I mean, the Noble will go up to 230 miles an hour without too much trouble. However, come to the corners, and the Ferrari is. I mean, you saw I got the pass done on that one. That is quite a scary place to do an overtake. The Noble tries to dive into the next corner and overshoots it. I can get the cutback, and now the Ferrari is leading the way. And the Noble is a very quick car. I think I drove the Noble in the very early. It was the benchmark car for the city car builds, and I said when I drove it for the first time, I was surprised by just how much grip there is in the Noble. The Noble is a really very good car to drive. Again, despite all the power, all the torque, and the relatively lightweight, the Noble is a very nice car to drive. It's a very planted car to drive. However, the trade-off is it is quite understeery. Now, that's okay for me. That's how I tend to drive my cars. Okay, I would rather have a car that's a bit understeery to have a car that's very planted. The thing is, with the 458, you don't have the understeer. You have the planted nature, and there is no understeer. Whereas in the Noble, I found when I went to drive the Noble after driving this Ferrari, the Noble, you can't put the power down halfway through a corner in the same way that you can with the Ferrari. You have to kind of, certainly through some of the corners here, you have to kind of let the Noble roll a little bit through the corner, then you go on the power. Whereas with the Ferrari, you don't have to do that. The Ferrari has so much grip. Now, it doesn't have the straight line speed in this particular battle. It's not that much worse than the Noble, but as you can see down here, even with me getting a better run onto the straight, I don't have the straight line speed of the Noble. I don't have the power or the torque, and it's lighter than the Speciale. So no, I'm going to struggle with that straight line speed, but it's not far off. It still gives the Noble some headaches. And again, through these next corners you're coming up, yes, you can take them flat out in the Noble. It is only a just thing though, and the thing is you make little tiny mistakes with the Noble over the course of a lap. If you get absolutely everything right, the Noble is a fraction quicker. It's not by much. We're only talking a couple of tenths of a second on this particular track, and let's face it, this is a much faster track than normal. On this particular track, as I got a signpost thrown at me again, not normal thing you see in a supercar race. On this particular track, the Noble is a little bit quicker than the Ferrari, but you have to get everything right. You just can't do that lap after lap with the Noble. It's just more difficult to drive. With the Ferrari, you can set incredibly consistent lap times. It's such an easy car. It's such an easy car to drive around a track. Again, you can see the Nobles just ran a little bit wide. Now I'm trying to be brave, going for the outside. Can't quite do it here. The Noble's understeering all the way through these corners. Yes, the Noble is a little bit quicker over the crest of the hill. In the end, I just managed to pressurise the Noble into a mistake, a tiny lock-up. The Noble ends up out wide, and the Ferrari goes through and will take victory in this race. Yeah, technically speaking, the Noble is a tiny bit quicker, but on a much twistier, tighter track, I have no doubt the Ferrari would drive away from it. So, conclusions on the 458 Speciale. It is an absolutely fantastic car. There is a very good chance that you may well overlook this car. Much like I never really thought much about this car. I was not particularly excited about this being in a DLC for Horizon 2. It's just another special edition Ferrari. Until I drove it. And it really is. It is that good. It is definitely worth the extra money over the standard 458 because it is just that good. It beat an Enzo. It beat a Noble M600. That's just how much speed you get from this car. It is so easy to drive with it as well. Has an absolutely lovely gearbox. I think it looks fantastic. Yeah, this is my new favourite Ferrari for when it comes to simply driving. No, it hasn't quite got the history of an F40 or a history of some of the classic race cars. It's not as pretty as some of the classic race cars either, but it's my favourite one to drive That is for sure. So yeah, definitely give this car a go if you haven't tried driving it already. You won't regret it, even if it is a bit expensive. You certainly won't regret it. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.